Hey everyone, we got a great webinar for you today. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, we're going to give everybody another minute here to trickle in. So if you can, just tell us where you're from and what your role is in the questions area in the meantime. All right. Steelhouse, LA. We got BizDev from Uruguay. Interesting. San Francisco, VP Sales. Nashville, Tennessee. St. Louis, New York. Belize. I didn't know there were a lot of companies in Belize. Beautiful place. Lucky you. Marketing operations, okay. Cool. Well, without any further delay, we're going to get started here. We're talking about how to hire and retain top sales talent today with LinkedIn. And Dan Stanton, Regional Sales Manager from LinkedIn, is joining us. Thanks for joining us today, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Max.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, this is obviously such an important topic. LinkedIn, you guys have grown so much over the years, especially your sales solutions side of the business. So we're not going to, obviously it's not going to be too product focused or even any product focused around LinkedIn, but you have not only the insights as somebody who's grown teams for at a fast growth company, but also kind of if there is one product out there that is useful for this, it's probably LinkedIn. So you've got some deep insights for us, and we're excited to get into it. So I'm going to let you take it over. Real quick before that, use the hashtag SHWebinar if you want to tweet during the webinar. Q&A we'll do after, so definitely ask your questions in the question and answer panel. We'll get to them at the end. And then the recording will be available in about 48 hours on saleshacker.com. So we'll give you some time at the end to kind of debrief, and if you want to catch the slides and the recording or send it to your team, you can do so once that's posted, and you will be notified. So Dan, take it away. Thanks for joining us.
No, thank you, Max. Thanks for having me. I actually think it's pretty interesting to be in a scenario where I get to give back to a group that I've taken so much from. So thank you for that. And,
love it.
Yeah, without further ado, I'll actually get to what we really want to talk about. So the topic for today is really how to hire and retain, but at the core of this conversation is how often do reps turn over? And when do we create those scenarios where we're either planning for attrition or we're unfortunately losing great talent? And so if you're thinking about that inside your business, interestingly enough, we're LinkedIn, we have the data, so we watch rep turnover constantly throughout companies all over the world. And when you look at it, we actually realize that 1 in 4 sales reps will leave within the year. That's pretty powerful data to me when I started thinking about I may lose 25% of my team at some point in time this year. And so when we started thinking about why this happens, it happens for a bunch of different reasons, but even more so, it happens at higher levels for younger tenured reps. We actually see between 0 and 5 years of experience, turnovers at 38%. So it's why is this happening? And really what we came to look at is the jobs that these new sales reps are taking on in the 0 to 5 year space, they're not easy. They're the sales development jobs that we're trying to set meetings and drive opportunity. It's brand new account executives and account managers and relationship managers. And these jobs involve a lot of grit and them learning foundational skills in order to be great. And this is actually really important because their job hasn't gotten any easier. And we actually think about what it costs the business to hire people, Aberdeen Group would actually tell you that on average to hire a new sales rep, it's going to cost you about $30,000 and 7 months for them to get back up to the productivity that your rep that you had in seat, the productivity that they were at. So this is a lot of friction in our systems, and as sales leaders, obviously eliminating friction and anything that we can do to hack our sales process is really what we want to be doing. So the question has to come in is like, all right, why are these sales reps leaving? And we've looked at it through the lens of how the buying landscape has changed. And when you think about the buying landscape, what makes sales reps' jobs hard now is that we're no longer going out to grab a steak with an ultimate decision maker, pitching our value prop and asking them for a purchase order, physical purchase order, at the end of the meeting. Our world is way more distributed. Lines of businesses have been taking budgets into many different places, and it creates this scenario where we're missing critical players. In fact, CEB will tell you it's 6.8 decision makers in the average buying process. LinkedIn will tell you that 20% of those decision makers are going to change jobs in a year. So if your sales cycle is over 6 months, your sales rep has to find somebody who's brand new to the organization and is bringing in new relationships, and they have to anticipate that somebody in the buying process is going to leave, causing for a lot of friction for them. Interesting second point is lack of credibility. We see that 77% of buyers don't believe that the sales rep they're talking to understands their business. Causes a lot of burnt cycles as reps continue to reach out to people. And then even once we get the meeting and we get somebody, we give them our value prop, stark realization is that 25% of pipeline disappears. We just lose touch with the prospect and the deal never even moves forward. There's a lot of variables that reps have to contend with. So we start thinking about, well, how do we solve these problems and why? This is where social selling comes in and why people are probably interested in coming to this webinar to figure out how to hire great social sellers. Social sellers actually use tools and insights to target the right buying committee, databases like LinkedIn, to figure out who are all of the relationships that I need to have. They consume information from a myriad of different sources that helps them use insights to trigger not just who to call, but also when to call them and what to talk to them about. And this makes them more effective. In fact, Aberdeen Group in that same study will tell you people who use insights or social selling practices will sell 9% more revenue than people that don't. Understanding the business is really important. And then finally, it's engaging through this cycle. How do I always stay maintained and understand when people are leaving my buying committee, when people are coming in? How do I move my deal forward? And social selling helps with all of these. And so hopefully by jumping into the webinar, that's like we're all grounded as to like why we're here. The other stark realization that I came to when I started at LinkedIn was that nobody had actually given me any formal training on social selling. I had used LinkedIn, I had invested in it in a previous role, but no one had taught me how to do it. And let alone taught me how to do it, no one taught me how to hire for it. I think this becomes like a really interesting thing to think about, which, let me go to my own story. When I was promoted from being a, I'll say, pretty good sales rep to above average sales rep at my company to a leader, my instinctual hiring process was find people that are able to do the things that made me successful. So who's going to grind it out? Who has the ability to, put a process in place and make a lot of phone calls and succeed? What I realized over time is what was making my reps more successful was leveraging insights. They started asking me to buy funding lists. They started trying to get me to fund roundtables and get more exposure into other people within different geographies. And all these things, when you compared them to each other, it was the reps who were using those insights were becoming more successful. That led to us investing in Sales Navigator. It eventually led to me coming to LinkedIn. And when I came to LinkedIn, I walked in and it was, the first day here was the quietest day I've ever had on a sales floor. Immediately I knew, I think I might need to change my hiring process because my current team at LinkedIn only social sells. We don't pick up the phone and call people unless we've got a meeting for you. or we've already engaged with you in some way, and we're not just spontaneously trying to get a voicemail into your inbox. So that led me to believe that there's a bunch of different skills that I'm going to have to like break down and try and figure out what's making these people successful. So the question is, how do you hire great social sellers? And I think this actually needs to be broken down into what makes a great social seller. And having a team and having been exposed to this really closely, here's my hypothesis, is that what makes a great social seller is that social sellers actually put an emphasis on strategy over volume. They look at creativity and cleverness versus standardization and template. And they try and leverage their ability to build relationships in order to mitigate burnt cycles. And so those are like if I look at a great social seller, those are like core things that they just do innately. So how do we hire people that can just do that? When it came to LinkedIn, we work in a place where if we're going to do something, we got to scale it. So my first year here, our team in the SMB leadership space for sales solutions, we decided to build a program around how to hire the best-in-class social sellers. And our program actually broke down into 4 steps, which is pretty easy. First was defining an ideal candidate profile, then build an evaluation process for that profile. Get ahead on sourcing, which I'll talk about a little bit later. I've had a recent experience with, and set up a 1-year look back. So I'm going to take some time to walk through each one of these steps. And I'm going to start with defining an ideal candidate profile. And I have said this is the most important thing that you can do, because this is the menu that you're going to pick from. And I will call out that there are plenty of places you could go to, like Cheesecake Factory, that have bad menus. They try and offer everything. I'm hiring for all of these different traits and titles and history experience, and somebody has to have X, Y, and Z, and you define this menu, and what happens is there's so much in there that you end up defaulting probably back to your thing that you go to all the time. You get the buffalo chicken wrap. And you don't really actually realize that there might be something better out there, something that's actually going to get you what you need and what you want. A clearly defined menu becomes extremely prescriptive. You get 2 options. They need this and then this, and you don't have a lot to pick from. And really defining if that menu allows you to actually free yourself up. So what is the actual good menu for a social seller? Well, we broke it down into 3 things that we wanted to think about. What's the knowledge that this person needs to have innately in order to be great in our company? What are the skill sets they need to have? Not work history, but skill sets that they need to have in order to be good social sellers. And what's the mindset that they have to come with in order to succeed in this role and be good at social selling at the same time? So when we broke that down, that actually, and I'm happy to share this about how LinkedIn has looked at this, and this is actually our ideal candidate profile. So we look at knowledge as being understanding our mission and our vision and our value. So if you understand the reason why people come to LinkedIn, right now the mission of Sales Solutions is to connect the world's buyers and sellers to make them more productive. And if you can align to something like that mission and align to the overall mission of LinkedIn, that is actually the type of person we're looking for, and we call that LinkedIn affinity. How bad do you want to be here, and how much do you align to what we do? Then we take a look at skills. The skills that we've defined for great social sellers is critical thinking skills, and you need to have strong critical thinking skills. You need to have a cleverness about you, or an ability to outsmart the system. Communication skills and coachability. That's our skill set area that we're looking for. When we think about mindsets, we need a really strong growth mindset, understanding that failure is a prerequisite for you to be great within a role. You need to have very high goal orientation. So can you clearly set goals for yourself, and you understand how to plan for those goals and execute on there, and even recall some of the challenges that you've gone through? And do you have a lack of self-consciousness? This will probably come up later. Probably the best way we've defined it is people look for that challenger seller. And we have defined the challenger mentality as a lack of self-consciousness. Are you comfortable with who you are in order for you to be able to present an idea or philosophy and teach, tailor, take control of an overall sales process? That's our ideal candidate profile. And once you have that menu defined, this is what I'm looking for. It actually frees you up. Often when I thought about how people hire, you tend to be in a major metro, you go back to the well of where's that organization that trains people really well, and I'll go snag them after a year or two and have them come over, and since that company did well, they tend to do well here. And in reality is, I think you need to break that mold. Diverse teams win, and so the more that you can find people from different backgrounds, different different working experiences, and that have the knowledge, skills, and mindset that you need, you should be able to coach them on everything else. So that's actually where we've started, and I imagine we'll get questions about that at the end, but that is our ideal candidate profile. So once you have that profile, what you can do is you can actually go ahead and figure out, like, how do I test for that? So you need to build an evaluation process. And we went through an exercise of looking at all of those things that we needed. So the critical thinking skills, coachability, lack of self-consciousness, cleverness, goal orientation, growth mindset, organizing all of those and figuring out what was most important to us. And so we stack ranked them. And when we stack ranked them, then we decided, okay, how am I going to test for critical thinking skills? And how are we going to test for communication? Once we figured out how we were going to test, or the questions we were going to ask around that, we built our interview process that way. So if communication was the most important thing that we thought, it was the first thing that we tested for. And if LinkedIn affinity had to be the fundamental knowledge that they had, then the recruiter needed to screen for that, because we didn't need to get down the process and understand, hey, you got all these skills, but you don't care about our mission and vision. That was like a non-starter for us. So it allowed us to organize our interview, and then we can do things like pressure test. So if you're after the first round and we really need to make sure that you have the right characteristics for us, we can spend more time going deep on those and asking you continual questions or figuring out other ways to test for that before we moved you into another spot. Question is, okay, give me an example of that. So I'll actually, not trade secret, but I'll talk about how we test for two things. And the way that we test for critical thinking, the first time I heard it, I was like, wow, that's going to be pretty tough. But we actually do it through a role play. And in that role play, we play a character that is probably somebody the customer, the account executive is not expecting, and not in a way to be complicated, but just in a way that they're going to have to think about how I'm going to have to manage this customer and how I'm going to have to travel down the path of getting them to move to the next step. But before they go down that role play, we actually ask them to do an activity. And we have them divide their paper up into quadrants, and we have them dig in on very specific information about that person in those quadrants. And while they're doing that, our ask is, hey, during the role play, I want you to take notes on these very specific things. And once you take those notes, at the end, we're going to review them. In reality, I'm not as concerned about how well they sell me in this role play. I'm actually more concerned about how well they were able to organize their thoughts in the moment, translate them into the notes that they were taking, and synthesize answers out of that. And so at the end, when the person who's role-playing with us is like looking for feedback on the role play, all of our feedback and questions and everything we do is diving into their thought process and the things that they were doing. What would happen if, what was the most important piece of information they got? What happens if they lose this deal? Why would they lose this deal? What information did they wish they had gotten? And all this helps us really test where they are from a critical thinking perspective. So that's one example. Another example would be how to test for lack of self-consciousness. Like, how do you test for challenger? And we've iterated on this in a bunch of different ways. And we've come up with a couple different things that talking about how people have voiced their opinions in groups. When have you told your boss, when have you ever provided your boss feedback about something you didn't think they were doing right. And we'll go as far as, how about you tell me something that's rather unusual about yourself that you don't think is very unusual, and maybe other people think it's weird. To lighten the mood, I often offer, hey, in high school, I'm not going to take too many follow-up questions on this one. In high school and college, I wore women's jeans. That's out there on the internet. I'm okay with that. But I'm a pretty small dude, and they fit better, so I'm fine with it. We often don't get answers like that, but I'm looking for somebody who's comfortable in their skin that can tell me something like that. And there's a certain set of person in there that we actually think, if they have the ability to do that, sets them up to be actually great social sellers. So those are two examples of actually how we test for what we're doing. The next thing we do is get ahead of sourcing. So this is actually a process that I think is pretty relevant. I've opened headcount right now and went through some recruiter turnover and had to actually take ownership of this activity. And surprise, surprise, I use LinkedIn Recruiter. This is LinkedIn on LinkedIn, and we do a lot to actually dig in. And the first thing that I think is really important about getting ahead of sourcing is understanding what you need. So there's actually 3 positions open in Chicago. So I know that to make 3 hires, probably going to need to do 7 second-round screens. That means I need to do about 14 to 16 first-round screens, 32 recruiter screens. I need to touch 64 people. So I went out and sourced 64 people, hitting 10 people a day, following up, really flexing that account executive hunter muscle that I hadn't used in several years. But as a manager, talent's my #1 priority. And so without a fully functioning team and without the best talent, this had to be the #1 thing I did. And so we have a really strong commitment to this, and this is why we put it in here to get ahead on sourcing. Another tidbit in there is we actually look in non-traditional backgrounds. So given that what I care about is growth mindset, goal orientation, communication skills, and critical thinking, I can actually look for people that are coming from backgrounds like teaching and different space that you may not think of someone who could be a great seller. But when we think about us as leaders, we can teach some sales skills about how to do certain things. But it's really hard to teach critical thinking skills, and it's hard to teach how to break down complex ideas into very simple stuff. And teachers are actually great at that. And so you can find, of course, they have to work through the whole hiring process, but you can go out and search in really different backgrounds for you to find people that you might not have found that actually end up being great social sellers. Once we actually do this, when it works right, if you have enough people in your pipeline, what we like to do is we have a goal to try and get our time to hire down to hopefully under 30 days, so that I can understand that someone is exiting my business and already know the people that I want to have coming into my business, and I can start actually having those conversations. That would be the most ideal state, and we're always working towards getting there. So that's what we're trying to do. I think this is a commitment thing that all managers should really probably invest in, which is how much time are you spending trying to find the next best people. And in the last bullet there, don't count out referrals. Your teams know great people and they know the job, and so that's also a great source for you to go ahead and dig for talent.
What are some ways you ask for referrals from your team?
Yeah, Max, great question. I've done this in 2 ways. One, I've actually blocked off time in their calendar on a Friday, which I think is like non-engaged selling time. So customer meetings Tuesday to Thursday. Give me a Friday afternoon. Maybe or maybe not grab a 6-pack of beer or something. Yeah. Put them in a conference room and say, hey, dig through your network on LinkedIn. Let's go find great people.
I was going to say, if you're in an office that allows a little happy hour on a Friday at 4:30 or something like that, it's a great time to get in there and say, hey, we need referrals. Go through your network. Who do you know?
Sure. And a lot of companies offer money, for getting referrals. I mean, it's not a wasted effort on your sales rep's time, especially for the money motivated. It's like, hey, let's get great people in here. If they get hired, we're gonna help you out. And I think
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely cheaper than paying a recruiter, which is the other alternative. And they, you know, the referral is honestly more vetted in some ways than going through a recruiter who's, you know, they're compelled to do it for monetary reasons.
Right. Yeah, there is, we don't talk about it too much in here, but I do think, I'll echo Max, what you're talking about is, I think there's a lot of this, is your recruiter aligned to your ideal candidate profile? Do they know what you're looking for? So I think that's a whole side conversation we could probably have. But when we look at referrals, we prioritize those first. So if you're getting referred in by somebody from LinkedIn to come work here, you're going to get screened. We want to talk to you. There's a lot of emphasis there that we can like see a lot of success from. So yeah.
Cool. I'll let you keep going.
Great call out. No, great call out. I think that the next step is actually making sure that this is an iterative process for you. So a lot of times when I think back around my original days of hiring, it was I found a candidate and I filled out the HR stuff and submitted it back in. I never really had a process for saying, hey, actually this person was great and they answered these questions this way. And so the next time I hear that, do I really know that I'm stacking people up appropriately? Real early days. Now, our process is extremely meticulous when it comes to how we score. So we keep an at aggregate list of every single person that we've ever interviewed. We've broken out our ideal client profile into subcategories, and we've stack ranked people on a score of 1 to 5 on how well they've done. And we do that, we're just very hard driving on fill out your candidate, your candidate checklist. And once we do that, we can come up with averages, and we look at trends and scores and where people come from, and hey, this person averaged a 3.5. That generally means we should go to second round. It just helps us make decisions. I would say, well, my boss would even always tell me, trust your gut to say no, but like you really need to like dig into the data around why you're saying yes and making sure that you're aligning and stack ranking people appropriately. Here's the second thing. If you do this, so in 2015 we hired 17 people. We probably went through 35 plus, maybe even 40 interviews overall when we think about it. We were able to stack rank all those candidates. We had scores for all of them. We had scores for the people we hired. At the end of 2015, late Q3, we went through an exercise where we just scored them all again. Managers did not look back at the scores. It was go back in, look at the score, just score your people again. Then we took a comparison. So if you scored a 4 in critical thinking in the interview process, now it's almost a year later, and you're a 4 or 5 in critical thinking, we would actually then look at, okay, where are you in attainment? And there's a very strong correlation that critical thinking, which we actually used to test really late in the interview process, critical thinking came up as strong in the initial interview, strong at the end of the year, attainment was high. All right, change where you test for critical thinking. We ended up moving our goal orientation story like down a step. We moved over our core fundamental sales skills things over and then realigned our priorities. And now our interview process is actually more fine-tuned for us to be better at actually capturing people right away. Because you could get a false positive real early and then move down the road and be like, oh, actually, no, this isn't a great candidate. I want to actually pull forward and understand who's best early and who isn't best early, so I'm not burning cycles going through the interview process. I can't stress enough the idea of it being like an iterative look back. So like thinking about this all in all is define your ideal candidate profile. And I offered up what LinkedIn looks at from a knowledge, mindset, skills. Each company, everybody out there is going to have something that's a little bit different. And so I think that you really have to take a look at what's making your people, what are your great people right now, what are they doing, and what's the skill sets behind that. And then maybe I'd like to know that, in social selling, I think what we're offering up, since that's all we do, probably some things that make great social sellers. Get ahead of sourcing, build out your evaluation process, and make sure that you set up a one-year look back. So the actual next question in here, which I think is pretty important, is like, hey Dan, if we hire great social sellers, how do I keep them? And my mentality on this has changed since I came to LinkedIn, and I believe that you don't. To back myself up a little bit, this isn't just my philosophy, it's LinkedIn's philosophy. And if anybody's read Reid Hoffman's The Alliance, it talks about the social contract that goes into bringing somebody onto your team. I am making a commitment to them that I am going to go ahead and do in their best interest, make them the best salesperson that they can be, or get them to the next step in their career. They're coming here because they want development and they want growth, and they're coming here to be social sellers because they want to do something that may be a little bit more challenging than sitting on an auto dialer, though that is really, really hard. But that they feel is like testing their skill set. And so when I think about that, I align with them. They're like, okay, where do you want to go? Okay, these are the skill sets that you probably need to get there. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to invest in you, and I'm going to invest in coaching you to get to those skill sets. But what I need from you is I need you to give me your all, and we're going to hold each other accountable to that. I'm going to be very caring and direct, and Kim Scott will call it radical candor, on whether we're doing the right things and where you're doing things well and where we need to work on. You need to hold me accountable. Am I coaching you to the next level? And so what happens in that scenario, not to be like, people actually give a ton. I still define our tour of duty as it probably takes like 2 years to be great in the role that I hire for. And so like a line on that one, like, hey, it takes about 2 years to be great. So like for those 2 years, I want you to give me everything, and I'm going to pour a bunch into you. But after those 2 years, let me do everything I can to help you to your next role. And generally what I get out of that is I get a lot out of my reps, and when I haven't established that social contract really well, I've probably seen the most friction and trust issues. And when I've established it really, really well, I've gotten really high-performing reps to do really amazing things because they really believe that they're getting developed and they're moving on to something great. So that's a LinkedIn philosophy. I recommend reading The Alliance on it. I think it's a very useful management tool to demand excellence out of people, and also get held accountable to making sure that you're fulfilling your half the bargain. So this is some of the people who are excellent. So this is all of us dressed up as Johnny Depp at our global sales kickoff. So this is the group, and I'm really proud of every single one of them. I think we really created an absolutely rock star team of social sellers, and so happy now to take questions, Max, and talk
I got a couple, and then we'll kick it over to the audience. But so one thing I want to know, and this is different between almost everybody I talk to, but when you hire these people, how many different individuals on your team are involved in the interview process, and do you hire on conviction or consensus, or how do you make that decision?
Great question. So I'll break that up. And individuals involved from my peer set, other managers, that are also managing teams and sales solutions, and then like my own actual team. So we have a two-manager interview in the second round. First round interview is manager over the phone to candidate. Second round interview is 2 managers to candidate, and the new manager actually does a role play. To get into a process, we role play 2 times, but that manager does a role play, so I'm not role playing. I get to listen in the second one. It helps me like zoom out a little bit and make sure when I was playing a character and testing for critical thinking skills, did I miss anything that was like that was kind of wonky about like the way that they go about their sales flow. So we do that. Then I generally I generally have them meet with someone on my team, either like right after they apply or right after that first round interview to understand, hey, where is this going? What's it like to be here? They'll engage either over the phone. In our second round interview, we bring them into LinkedIn, and so we normally give them some time to talk to people on the team.
And is it convention or consensus?
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah. So I trust my gut to tell me no. I'll take a false negative. So I'm okay with being wrong and saying no, I'm not going to hire this person. But when I say that we stack rank people and score them and evaluate with another manager, that is like probably consensus and data driven approach.
Okay. And do you have a like actual rubric like sheet that you created? Is this like a doc that you have?
Yeah.
I don't know. You probably can't share it, but like
it's an extensive Google sheet that we have that has every single candidate, what they scored in each round for the last 2 years. So what they scored in our recruiter screen, our first round screen, or our second round screen. It's a lot of people.
And we have a question from the audience here around reevaluation. So have you ever had to reevaluate when you test for certain traits? I remember you said that a year later you kind of reevaluate, but
yeah, that reevaluation was for like is our hiring process right? I think this goes into the go deep rather than going wide. So since I know that there's 5 or 6 things that make great social sellers for my team, I'll give you an example. I just got out of an interview and I'm stuck on lack of self-consciousness. Can this person be a changer? And I don't have to actually worry about testing for anything else. So I've presented him with a couple different, hey, this is what it's like to be give me another example of challenging, or I present him a scenario where he should be challenging. And if they can't test through that, then it's a no.
Yep.
I think I remember can't be specific.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I remember you talking about your conversion funnel when you were getting ahead of sourcing. How'd you come up with that funnel?
So that's been through
just time tested, or?
Yeah, that's pretty time tested. It's also there's baked in I think when I went about it, we originally thought that we were going to have to reach out to more candidates, but hey, are you interested in working at LinkedIn and talking about social selling? That got actually a pretty high response rate. Surprised, I guess, the people were really willing to hey, I'll have a conversation. I'm a passive candidate. I wasn't looking for a job, so that dictated how we adjusted how many screens we needed to do. But we worked back from the math and assumed it's probably 50%, and then up until how many offers we need, it's probably 1 out of 4. So 4 second rounds, and we need to give we'll probably get 1 candidate out of that.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because those are 2 really, really interesting key takeaways. There's the conversion funnel, finding your conversion funnel for your company and knowing, backing into it, how many people you need to get in touch with, and then also the referral side of things. The conversation we had before, really just go through your existing people's networks. You said something earlier about hiring teachers. Logically, they're going to be great at sales because they ask questions, they're curious, and they want to be able to teach people how to kind of come to a conclusion. And they're usually highly empathetic, so they understand if it's not the right fit. I mean, they're ideal. What else? What other folks have you seen? I speak to a bunch of companies that are we always hire junior college baseball players. It just always seems to be a repeating thing. Another one I've seen is row. So people who are obviously highly disciplined that get up cold weather 4 in the morning and are out on the lake rowing in the cold and
Yeah, I've got a recruiter search pulling in All-Americans. I think if you're an All-American, no matter what you're doing, it's interesting to just talk to you. You've clearly defined the ability that you have a growth mindset, and failure is prerequisite to you being amazing, and they can always be good. I don't mean to plug recruiter, but there's there's 3 people in the United States that have growth mindset, growth mindset, marathoning, and cupcakes in their profile. That may not be useful to everybody, but I thought get pretty specific.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because if you hire, if you hire a teacher who's really good, there are high odds that they know somebody else, especially if you're giving them an exceptional work, experience. There's probably good odds that they know the people that want to come work there.
Totally. Living in Chicago, I'm always interested in Chicago public school teachers that are looking to make a shift in like, hey, I've been doing this for a while, but this is hard. I have another set of skills that I think I'd like to test out. Maybe I want to run a business one day. And sales is a fundamental cornerstone. And I got to learn how to sell if I'm going to run a company, because I got to sell to get funding. I got to sell to pitch ideas. I got to sell to lead.
I've seen companies hiring sales development reps, and they're doing it. They're hiring people from certain frats and sororities because they know they can tap into those pipelines of people who are in the frat or in the sorority. Even if it was at a different school, there's still an alumni network there, and those are all the people that are coming out of college that were in Greek life. So we got another question here.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we just wanted to really get a defined the 5 or 6 things that make for a great social seller.
Yeah, I can review what we've defined as what would make a great social seller at LinkedIn. I want to caveat that each company is going to be a little bit different, and so I don't think these are end all be all. But what I think actually let's go back to that first point. What do social sellers do that's different than people if somebody who's just picking up the phone and hustling, hard working their way to their quota, is that social sellers emphasize strategy over volume. They think about they have a critical thinking and cleverness predisposition versus, all right, I've got a template and I'm going to send it to 2,000 people, and I just keep sending my template over and over and over again. To social sell, you have to ingest insights and then leverage. Do I use this insight now or later? Do I talk about this fact that this guy has MMA in his profile, or do I just not talk about that? That was a real example. And then last, that really I think they have to know how to build relationships. So there's some people that I think you could hire who have a scorched earth policy around how they feel about other people. I don't think that's going to make them a great social seller. I think your network equity actually makes you better. And so smaller network, but more reliable network allows them to make introductions to, or get introductions to a lot of people. And so emphasizing there. Our ideal client profile, so just to make sure I nail all the points on it, is in knowledge, we go LinkedIn affinity. In mindset, we look for goal orientation, growth mindset, and a lack of self-consciousness. In the skills, we're looking for critical thinking skills, coachability, cleverness, and that's it. That's our profile. Sorry, recalling that off the top of my head. Can't find my notes in front of me.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty good profile. It's pretty comprehensive, and again, there's every organization's different. There's no silver bullet there, but there are definitely certain things that overlap, like the curiosity and the empathy sides of things. But to hire somebody who's, I think the root of it is definitely at that kind of curiosity. Am I able to do the research and understand what the right things are? And do I have that emotional capacity, as a salesperson to know where the boundaries are? I think that's the question that I see a lot, is how much research is too much research when you're doing social selling, and what are the boundaries? And my answer to that is usually, if you don't know, you shouldn't be in sales, because that's pretty basic stuff, right?
Yeah.
For understanding, I'm having a conversation with someone that I just met. Don't talk about their children or something. It's kind of common sense. But those are things you can easily test for. when hiring
Yeah.
somebody and understanding if they're going to be a good social seller or not?
It's interesting. We'll get into that critical thinking exercise. So I like totally hearing you that you should be able to see when you're interviewing people this curiosity and empathy thing play out. You'll see great salespeople when you're doing the critical thinking feedback. The wheels start turning in their head. They're like, oh, I get why he's asking me what was the most important piece of information in this bucket, because the reason he's asking is he's trying to figure out if I'm actually going to move ahead, like what's my next chess move. And so you'll just start seeing the wheels turn inside the interview process, and you're like, all right, this person understands, and they're listening well enough to my questions that they're synthesizing the information and making moves to position themselves for like what I'm probably going to ask them next. And that's when you know you're like nailing it. And I'm like, all right, I got somebody who's going to be able to do this on the fly when they're like synthesizing information from a customer's profile or news information that they're getting and the conversations that they're having on the phone.
Great. We got one more question here from the audience. How do you create traction in an organization to enable all sales leaders to adopt social selling?
So great question. I want to like, I guess the question would be like, if I'm thinking about this from a hiring perspective, I believe that creating an ideal candidate profile for your company creates common language. And so when you create common language, you're more effective in diagnosing and discussing the problems or the solutions that you have to hiring for the organization as a whole. So however big your organization is, the ability to talk about, hey, spiky in critical thinking, lacking in cleverness, need to test here or here in order to move to the next round, creates efficiency and allows like your hiring team and the people that are involved in making decisions to be really great. So I want to like call out that I think creating common languages around hiring helps you hire a profile the right way, and that institutes the type of people that you're going to bring into the organization. How do you specifically create traction for social sellers? In my experience, it's actually been segment by segment. When I was rolling this out at CDW, we started in a pocket and then beta tested and said, hey, could given another scenario, given an alternative option to just making 80 dials and trying to get people to send out a bunch of quotes, could we give a group of people Sales Navigator, and if over a period of time, could we drive up average daily sales for that group versus another beta group? And once we tested that and proved it, we were able to just say like, okay, let's expand the pot, and kept expanding the pot. That's how we did it in an organization that wasn't LinkedIn. But I think that that's where you need to have alignment between what are the problems that our sales reps are running into, why are they running into them, and what solutions are we offering them to solve those problems. It doesn't have to be Sales Navigator. It just has to be like, how are we giving them more insights? Because the data says insight-led discussions where your sales rep knows more about their customer prove out to be a better conversation and get you to the table more often. So what tools do you give them to do that? And how are you testing people that are doing it versus aren't? And that helps you build that business case to like carry that message up. Interestingly enough, like when we think about how we sell our product, social selling is becoming very, I would say, evangelized. We'll see people who bought tools for social selling in one company moving to another company and immediately calling us and being like, hey, they're not social selling here. Let's get on the phone. Let's talk about like, here's the problems I see. We see very high win rates for us in people just transplanting it. So I think it takes that one person, and I think it takes you building a process to test it.
Okay. Cool. Well, that was pretty awesome. We're right on time here at the 50 marker. So just one last thing. How can people get in touch with you? Do you want to, LinkedIn obviously is a pretty good one?
Yeah, I'm not on Twitter that much, so if you connect with me on, like, I wouldn't say connect with me on LinkedIn, but you can email me on LinkedIn. I'm happy. I can provide my email address here or provide it with the webinar, but it's dstantonjr@linkedin.com. Don't email my dad. So D Stanton Jr. And that's
JR?
JR. Yeah, JR. So D Stanton JR @linkedin.com. And
Cool.
you can get in touch with me.
Well, thanks so much for joining us today. That was really awesome. I think we got a lot of really tactical, actionable nuggets from there that hopefully everybody can walk away with. So recording will be up in 48 hours. Tell your team, debrief, and go connect with Dan on LinkedIn. Shoot him an email if you have any questions. Thanks, Dan.
Hey, Max, thank you for the opportunity. Thank you, everybody, for showing up.